We are taught from the beginning that control is power. Control your time. Control your work. Control your future. Plan every detail. Predict every turn. And if you do, you will be safe. You will succeed. That's the lie most of us quietly carry. You've lived inside that story for so long you barely notice it. Every choice becomes a calculation. Every pause feels like falling behind. Every unanswered question feels like danger. So you grip the wheel tighter. You fill your calendar. You read more, learn more, push harder. You tell yourself, if I just do enough, I can shape life into what I need it to be. But the truth, the harder you push, the more fragile you become. Because life was never designed to be gripped like that. You may look around and think, but isn't this what strong people do? Aren't we supposed to hustle, to strive to chase the dream? And yet, why do you feel so tired? Why does your chest stay heavy, even on your best days? Why does your mind never stop racing, even when you're alone? Because you're not tired from doing, you're tired from forcing. Imagine holding a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. And still, you try to squeeze harder, convinced that more force means more control. But life isn't sand. It's a river. And rivers don't respond to fists. You see, sometimes, what feels like progress is just motion. Spinning your wheels, running in place while calling it forward movement. There's a reason you feel like you're constantly negotiating with life. If I can just make this happen, then I'll be okay. But peace isn't hiding behind the next victory. It's hiding behind the tension you refuse to release. And here's the most difficult part to face. Sometimes you are the one standing in your own way. Not because you're weak, but because you're afraid of what might happen if you loosen your grip. There is a quiet magic that begins the moment you loosen your grip. At first, it feels unnatural, like standing still while the world keeps spinning. You're so used to running, to reaching, to grasping for the next thing that stillness feels wrong. But slowly, quietly, something shifts. The weight that's been pressing on your chest begins to lift. Your breath deepens without you even noticing. The noise in your head, once so loud, begins to soften. And for the first time in what feels like years, you catch a glimpse of life moving without your constant pressure. You start to see what was always there, hidden behind the haze of your own tension. People appear, not because you demanded them, but because you finally created space for them to arrive. Opportunities unfold, not forced into existence, but rising naturally, like morning light spilling through a window. You realize that life was never withholding from you. It was simply waiting for you to stop blocking the door. The moment you stop insisting that it must unfold your way, life breathes. Just like the river. The river never fights the rock that falls into its path. It curves, adjusts, flows around it, always moving forward. It doesn't panic. It doesn't resist. It trusts its own current. And you were made to move like that too. But somewhere along the way, you were taught to fight every obstacle, to view delays as punishments, to see detours as failures. And so you pushed harder, believing that force was strength. Yet every ounce of forcing only stiffened your soul. Every attempt to control only created more resistance. Letting go doesn't mean abandoning your dreams. It means stepping into alignment with them. It means trusting that life knows routes you cannot see yet. When you release the timeline, when you surrender the image of how it must look, that is when you finally make room for life to surprise you. The doors you tried to pry open with your bare hands, some were never yours to open, and the ones meant for you, they swing wide the moment you stop banging on them. Beneath every tight grip, there's a trembling fear, not always loud, not always easy to name, but it's there whispering, what if I fail? What if I lose them? What if nothing comes? If I stop pushing? What if life forgets me? If I let go? And so fear puts on its clever disguise. It doesn't always arrive screaming. Sometimes it shows up as ambition, as discipline, as endless planning, as the voice that tells you, if you don't control it, no one will. But at its core, it's still fear. The fear of falling. The fear of being forgotten. The fear that life is indifferent unless you force it to notice you. You see, control has never been about strength. It's always been about protection, about guarding yourself from the ache of uncertainty. You clench because you think you must. You push because the unknown terrifies you. You script every outcome because you cannot bear the thought of what might happen if you simply trust it. But here's the truth you've been running from. Your clenching does not prevent the pain. It only postpones it. And sometimes it even creates it. Every time you grip tighter, you close your hands to receiving. You shut the doors life has been trying to open. Because while fear narrows, trust expands. What if just for a moment you release the need to know? What if you allowed yourself to believe that what's meant for you won't pass you by? What if you let life breathe without your constant supervision? It sounds simple, almost too simple. But letting go requires a kind of courage that forcing never demands. Because to surrender means to admit, I don't know how this will unfold, but I trust that it will. And that trust, that quiet, unshaken trust, is where freedom lives. Not in controlling outcomes, but in standing still long enough for life to reveal what's already coming your way. There is something almost invisible that happens when you stop forcing. The air shifts, the tension drains, and without trying, you become magnetic. Not because you've done more, but because you finally become more whole. People sense it before you speak. In the way you walk, steady, unhurried. In the way your eyes meet theirs, calm, not searching. In the quiet rhythm of your presence, full, not grasping. You no longer need to convince, to chase, to prove. And that absence of need draws life toward you, because energy does not lie. It whispers what your words often try to hide. When you carry desperation, the world feels it. When you move with urgency, people sense the gap you're trying to fill. And in response, life retreats. But when you rest in sufficiency, when you embody the truth that you are already enough, the world softens its defenses. You no longer push conversations to unfold. You no longer manipulate moments to go your way. Instead, you create space. And in that space, everything begins to realign. The right people no longer feel heavy to be around. The right opportunities no longer feel distant. Even challenges feel less like enemies and more like invitations to grow. You see, surrender isn't passive. It's deeply active in a different way. It's the quiet confidence that says, I trust what's for me will find me. I no longer need to grab at what was never mine to hold. It's not about doing nothing. It's about doing without desperation. showing up fully but unattached to the outcome. And that detachment, that rare steady energy, is what turns strangers into allies, closed doors into openings, and distant dreams into unfolding realities. You become the calm in the middle of the storm, and people, whether they realize it or not, are drawn to that calm. Because deep down, we're all searching for someone who's no longer searching. There's a kind of tiredness that sleep cannot fix, a heaviness that lingers even on your quietest days. You wake up with it. You carry it through every conversation, every plan, every unfinished task. It's not the exhaustion of doing too much. It's the exhaustion of carrying too much that was never yours to hold. You've spent years forcing life to obey your timelines, negotiating with the unknown, trying to convince yourself that if you just work a little harder, love a little more, fix a little faster, everything will finally click into place. But that pressure, it never leaves, because there's always one more outcome to control, one more person to convince, one more future to secure. You cling to relationships that expired long ago. You maintain versions of yourself that no longer fit who you're becoming. You keep conversations alive that drain you, hoping they'll somehow validate your worth. And slowly, without noticing, you forget what ease even feels like. Even your dreams start to feel like burdens, measured against deadlines, compared to other people's timelines, turned into checklists instead of living visions. And all the while, your chest tightens, your mind races, your soul whispers, "I'm tired." But you ignore that whisper, because stopping feels dangerous. Stopping feels like failure. So you keep negotiating with life. If I just hold on a little longer, if I just try one more time, if I just prove myself one more way. But life doesn't respond to negotiation. It doesn't reward exhaustion. It waits not to punish you, but to invite you back into flow. Because forcing doesn't bring peace. It postpones it. It builds walls where doors should be. And the longer you grip, the further peace seems to drift. Not because it's running away, but because your hands are too full to receive it. Something beautiful begins to rise in the emptiness you once feared. When you stop forcing, you create space. And in that space, clarity whispers. It doesn't arrive with grand announcements. It doesn't shout its truth into your busy mind. Instead, it waits until you are still enough to hear. You begin to realize not every opportunity is meant to be chased. Not every silence is rejection. Not every unanswered call is abandonment. Sometimes it's simply a pause, a breath before something better unfolds. In this space, you meet yourself again. Not the version you've performed. Not the identity you built to fit expectations. But the quiet self underneath it, all the one who never needed to prove anything to be worthy. That self moves with a softer strength. It walks without rushing. It speaks without trying to persuade. It chooses with peace, not panic. For so long, you believed that your worth was measured by your ability to keep everything together, to hold every piece in place, to never drop a single responsibility, to never let anyone see you falter. But here in the stillness, you see the truth. You were never meant to hold it all. You were only meant to carry what was yours, not the weight of everyone's expectations, not the pressure of perfect timing, not the burden of endless control. And the moment you stop performing, life meets you with gentleness. The right people stay without being held. The right paths appear without being forced open. The right answers come without you having to demand them. Because clarity doesn't grow in noise. It grows in spaciousness. In the quiet courage to say, I don't have to chase what belongs to me. And with every breath, you feel lighter. Not because life has become easier, but because you've stopped making it harder than it ever needed to be. You were never meant to fight your way through life. You were never meant to carry it all on your back, to force doors open with trembling hands, to chase love like it might disappear if you paused to breathe. Life was never testing your strength that way. It was always waiting for your trust. You see what you've been running after peace, clarity, belonging was never hiding behind the next accomplishment. It was waiting for you in the silence, in the pause, in the letting go. You were not designed to grip life like a rope slipping through your fingers. You were made to walk alongside it like an old friend, to listen, to trust the seasons, to let what's meant for you rise gently, not be dragged into place by fear. The version of you that always chased, always pushed, always performed. That version is tired. Not because you are weak, but because your soul was never built to live in that constant tension. When you finally loosen your grip, even just a little life size with you, the weight lifts, the fog clears, and you remember what it feels like to simply be here, fully present, breathing. And then something unexpected happens. Life begins to move softly at first, then all at once. Doors you once begged to open now swing effortlessly. People who once felt distant now draw near. Not because you chase them, but because you stop chasing anything at all. You become a quiet magnet, not pulling by force, but by presence. Because presence has always been the greatest power. The power that says, I no longer need to hold life hostage to feel safe. I am already safe. I am already enough. And from that place, life unfolds. Not perfectly, not always painlessly, but honestly. And you move forward without the weight you once thought was necessary. You finally remember, you were never meant to force life. You were only meant to trust it.